Hi, Junior Hires. John Riley here, the Junior High Pastor at Emmanuel Faith, coming at you via video, still due to quarantine. The church is starting a new series looking at the book of Daniel. I love this book. So much mystery, intrigue. There's magic even in it, and visions through dreams. It's really cool stuff that's going to be happening here. And at the center of it is a person who starts as a young man, perhaps junior high age, perhaps just a little bit older, but a young man who makes a good first impression and stands up for his convictions as a follower of God. And that's what happens here in chapter 1, which we'll see. You will see it didn't start off well for Daniel and for his buddies. In fact, they were invaded by an army and they were taken prisoner, taken captive into a foreign land. And there, as slaves, they actually got sort of what would be a pretty good gig for a slave. They're still prisoners there, but they get put into this training school, sort of a military, sort of a training school to learn how to serve the king, specifically to learn how to work in the king's palace. And once they're there, they get this assignment. They're given good food to eat, good quarters to stay, and good lessons to learn everything that they need to know to work well for the king in that culture. So they're given a good education and a good start for their sort of new life as these quasi-slave servant people. It says that Daniel is given this ration of food, the choicest foods, the best foods that are given to these guys that are in this elite program of training to serve in the king's castle. And in chapter 1, verse 8, it says this: "But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine." He resolved. What did he resolve for? He resolved to stick to the biblical teachings about what he should eat. You may not have known this, but before veganism was cool, it was in the Bible and listed as the best way to eat in order to stay the healthiest. And that's what Daniel said. He didn't want to eat the meat or drink wine that was given to them. And the official that was in charge said, "Look, how can I let you not do that? If you only eat vegetables and water," which was his request, he's like, "you're going to not be as strong. And then the king's going to cut off my head if he sees that I'm intentionally letting these people not be as strong." So Daniel and his buddies said, "Hey, just test us for 10 days. Give us 10 days and see who looks better at the end of the time." And sure enough, the guy said at the end of the time, Daniel and his 3 buddies looked the healthiest and the strongest. And so he continued letting them have just vegetables and water, and they grew strong and smart. In fact, the strongest and the smartest, you might say. At the end of the chapter, the king interrogates them after 3 years of training. And they were the strongest and the smartest and the most superior, the ones the king wanted to use and elevate to the highest positions in his new government after their years of training. I think that's pretty cool. Imagine in this scenario, I know some of the people watching this video are from divorced families, and at different times you go to mom's house and other times to dad's house. And I imagine what happens is you have different rules in some of the different households. Imagine your dad had certain rules, and then over the summer you're going to stay at your mom's house, and your mom had a different set of rules, but you said, "Hey, no, this is really important to dad. And is it okay if I don't," whatever the new thing is? Specifically like this: what if your dad at his house, they said, "We don't drink soda, no caffeine, stay off of this stuff." And so that summer you go to your mom's and your mom opens the fridge and there's all this soda in there. You can have whatever you want. And saying, "You know what, I feel convicted. I'm going to stick to the rules that are at my dad's house." Many of us would be like, "What? That's crazy." I've actually known some students that have done that. I've known some students who come from families where they're not allowed to play video games. Mom, dad say, "No playing video games in this home." And they go to a friend's house and the friends have video games there and they're like, "Come on, play, let's play. Here's the remote controller for the Wii. Here's for the PS4. And they're like, "That's our parents' rule, no video games." And they've stuck by those convictions. Other students are like, "Yeah, I can't wait to get to that friend's house because I can play video games over there." There's a difference. See, now when our parents and our human authorities make rules, they're a little bit more arbitrary. But when God makes the rules, we can trust them. And like Daniel say, "I'm going to stick to this conviction for my good and for God's glory." For my good and for God's glory. For my good and for God's glory. And here's how it says it at the end of chapter 1. It says, at the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel. And they'd actually changed their names from Daniel to Belshazzar, and his friend Hananiah to Shadrach, Mishael to Shadrach, Meshach, and you can guess the third one. Yep, his third buddy, Azariah, whose name was changed to Abednego. It said that they looked the best. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. What? This isn't just 10 times better than the ones who had gone through the 3 years of training. This is all of the other people in their kingdom. That God's followers, the people who trusted God and put him first, rose above because of their faithfulness and their desire to do the right thing. And God helped their mind be ready for the challenges that were ahead. That's my prayer for our junior high students here, that we'll stay committed to God's principles, and because of that, rise above, not in a cocky, I'm better than you way, but in a God's first kind of way in our lives and in our service. That's my prayer for you, and I hope that you'll follow in Daniel's footsteps moving forward. For my good and for God's glory.